Hi you guys, welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Allie Wilkins. I'm so happy that you're here. If you're new, welcome, and if you're coming back, thank you for continuing to support my channel and watch these videos, and I just always hope that they're really supportive for you. So today we're going to be talking about Mary Magdalene. A couple days ago was Mary Magdalene's feast day, which is July 22nd, and I just realized I have a bunch of products and stuff on my website about Mary Magdalene, but I don't have anything on my YouTube channel really, just devoted straight to her. And I want to just start out and say that Mary Magdalene is an incredibly layered conversation to have. It's something that we could talk for 15 years about. So it's going to be kind of hard for me to just do a quick little video here. And I just want to tell you, first of all, if you want to go deeper into studying Mary Magdalene, there are two different things that I offer specifically around her frequency. One, I have a $30 masterclass on my website called Invoking Mary Magdalene. This is super informative. You're going to learn, I think it's like 2.5 hours. You're going to learn who Mary Magdalene was historically, and then you're also going to learn about the mystery of the Magdalene and start to move into that direction. And then I have, I believe it's about 30 minutes, a shamanic journey at the end of that class where you can meet Mary Magdalene in the priestess temples. And it's genuinely so beautiful. And that's only $30. So if you want to learn more about her, like you can see, I have tons of books just around the Magdalene and around that frequency and that consciousness. If you want to learn all of that stuff just in a shorter period of time, go get the masterclass. I'll put the link in the comments. And then I also have a course called The Priestess Returns that is about the 4 faces of the Magdalene, and these are faces that I channeled from her specifically. I didn't learn these anywhere. It's a really in-depth study of how we learn to embody the Magdalene, and this is a perfect place to start. I'll put the link for that in the comments too. So Mary Magdalene is the feminine Christ, and you might already be very uncomfortable hearing that. We have not learned about that there was a feminine Christ, right? She was completely suppressed. Women from the time period of Jesus since then have been incredibly suppressed, and the female power is just starting to return to the planet. And so Mary Magdalene was the feminine Christ. And I want to talk first about the term Magdalene. Magdalene is a lineage. Magdalene is a line of women who carried a certain frequency. And you could say that this is a line of priestesses. Mother Mary was also a priestess. These are things that we've never been taught. Why? Because it would be dangerous for women to remember this sort of information, because then we would have too much power. And I could go way deeper into that. I actually just tried to record another video about this, and I went way on a tangent about that, because there's just so much to talk about. The concept of Mary Magdalene brings up so much, because genuinely so much has been hidden from us. But I just want this to be a quick, nice video about Mary Magdalene as a little introduction. If you are just learning about her, or you just want to hear my take on Mary Magdalene. But if you're new to the conversation, I am so excited for you, because Magdalene represents really female liberation. And she works a lot with so for me personally, I met Mary Magdalene really working with the depth of the heart. And she often comes to people when we are in deep suffering or in deep pain. You might have a similar experience with Mother Mary, but their frequencies are very different. They sort of represent different archetypes, but they have both been very, very misrepresented. But I can sense myself wanting to go in another direction, so we're going to stay on the topic of Mary Magdalene. So, who was Mary Magdalene? I believe Mary Magdalene was Yeshua's wife, Jesus's wife. People who hear that sometimes are like, what? Jesus wasn't married. Like, that's preposterous to think that he had a wife. Like, why? Why would that be so weird? And one of the things that I teach about the church is that, making Jesus a celibate, like sexless individual to represent his purity is one of the biggest betrayals, because our sexual energy is our most powerful frequency. And the belief system that Jesus was not a sexual being is extraordinarily damaging. Everyone has a sexual primal instinct, and believing that, you know, the holiest one on our entire, who has walked our earth, at least in this age, believing that he was too pure to have sex automatically makes us all sinners for enjoying sex, right? So there's a lot more there. I have another masterclass called Return to Goddess that I think I talk about that, but we definitely talk about it in the Priestess Returns. And we talk about that in depth around the sexual liberation piece of Mary Magdalene's frequency. So anywho, Mary Magdalene really represents liberation. And she, like I was saying, she meets a lot of us in the spaces of great suffering. And so you might have Mary Magdalene and Yeshua come to you, or you might just have her come to you. Also, this will really depend on your comfort with men. And what you're open and available to, perhaps depending on what it is that you're working with. But Mary Magdalene's frequency is really around the depth of liberation in whatever form that takes. And she has sort of represented this suppressed version of the feminine and I'm just being drawn to talk about, you know, in the Bible, there's a lot of conversation around women don't speak unless they're spoken to. Women basically don't have any power. Women are sinners. Women are, the only reason that they're here is to procreate, and then anything that is birthed from them is born a sinner. Like, there's a lot of distortion around just womanhood. And Mary Magdalene existed at the time frame that all of this was really starting to shift. And the feminine power was starting to be destroyed, really. Well, that's not true. Feminine power can never be destroyed, but it was being sucked out of women through the authorities that be, especially a few hundred years later when Christianity was established as like the main religion, and other religions were then deemed like you could be executed for not believing in Christianity, or that's what heretics were. So there, you can see that it's hard for me to just stay on the topic of Mary Magdalene because she is so interconnected with so many other topics. That's why I have the Return to Goddess Masterclass, which is completely free, by the way. Like, you should watch it. It's not easy to watch, but it's important to know. It's really information that will change everything, and how you perceive the world, and how you perceive yourself as a woman, and how you perceive the women in your life if you're a man watching this. And especially if you have sister wounds, like, there's just so much that's connected to this. So Mary Magdalene was not just a priestess, she was also the feminine Christ. And I want you to just sit with that for a minute. How does that feel for you? The feminine Christ. I can remember going to church when I was little and telling my mom, like, they're lying. They're lying about something. And it wasn't like the pastor, it wasn't, you know, that the church was super toxic or anything. But there was some form of remembrance, even when I was, 6, 7 years old, that like, there's a major piece of this missing. And I heard from one of my teachers once, she said it this way, and I just loved it. Her name is Elaine Dowdy. And she said, there's a father and a son. Where's the mother and daughter? How was the son born? How was the son born? Father and son, where is the mother and daughter? They've been removed from history. Literally, they have been removed from history. Like, if you go back and look, and there's evidence for this everywhere, so much of the sacred scrolls, the Library of Alexandria, all of these really important documents from pre-Christ, all burnt. Or they're deeply buried in libraries that a lot of times you have to have special licenses to even go get these books or to go look at them. Like, this information has been purposely so hidden from us and actively destroyed, mostly by the church. And so in, I believe it was the early 1940s, there were a lot of different texts that were found in the Middle East, buried in different places, that were saved and preserved. And these were some of the Gospels of Mary, the Nag Hammadi texts. These are sacred texts from the times around Jesus and before that were kept out of the Bible. And these were all texts that talked about many things, but feminine power, feminine ability, but also our ability to reach God through the heart. And when you start to look at some of these texts and you start to look at the patterns, and in connection with Mother Mary and Mary Magdalene and priestesses and the goddess lineage and all of these things, you start to see, why was this stuff kept out of the Bible? Well, you know, Christianity, of course, there's many religions, but Christianity, like, most people in the world know the stories of Christianity. And this is a religion that has massively impacted our globe, our global system, the way that we think, the way that we operate. And you might think that, you know, oh, I didn't go to church growing up. I don't have that programming. Do you know the story of Adam and Eve? I think every person on the planet, except unless you live in like an indigenous tribe separated from humanity and civilization, everybody knows that story. We are all programmed through it, whether you think you are or not. And so this is where we have to really start to learn about this and study about this, because it is informing so much of what we believe about ourselves, about our sexuality in particular, about spirituality, about God, because we've been told a bunch of BS about how we connect to God. So again, bringing myself back to Mary Magdalene, I get really heated on this subject because not only do I remember a lot from other lifetimes, but I've seen a lot working in the Akashic Records, and I've also studied a lot about this conversation, and it's repulsive. The things that have been hidden from us, it has destroyed so much on our planet over the last 2,000 years. So this is why I'm super passionate about talking about the history of the feminine, and I call this the ancient feminine. I'm so passionate about teaching people about this because it is impacting us so incredibly deeply. So Mary Magdalene is just one of the women of the Magdalene lineage. She's sort of the last, like, most famous one, but many of you watching this are Magdalenas, and I am as well. And these are just priestesses who hold the energy of the divine feminine, who are carrying that torch, carrying that legacy. And these women in the past would have been called the Watchtower women. That's one of the meanings, translations of Magdalene. And these were women who sort of held the stories, held the prophecies, held the power, and had a sacred role. You could also potentially call these the high priestesses, but high priestess is sort of like a wider term. You could assign the role of high priestess to like a lot more, that maybe someone wasn't a Magdalena, maybe they're a high priestess of a different culture. But Mary Magdalene, when we really tune into her energy, it's how do we become Christed through our feminine energy? How do we become Christed in our feminine energy? And how do we return back to the powerful, liberated feminine? And what does the feminine even mean? Because growing up in this century, especially if you were born, like, no one's watching this who was born in like the 1800s, but we don't have role models of what true feminine power looks like. We have role models of what masculinized feminine power looks like. So we don't have any clue, unless you remember it, about what true goddess power looks like in an individual. And the Magdalenas would have been holding this power. They would have been sovereign. They would have been sexual. They would have been liberated. They would be free. They would be ecstatic. There are many different sort of pathways of the Magdalene and of the feminine in general. But Mary Magdalene is one of the energies that can really work with you around the depths. She especially is great to work with when you're working with trauma, or when trauma is arising within you. You can call the Magdalene towards you. She's going to work with everybody so differently. And, you know, when I talk about goddesses a lot, and I talk about creating relationships with goddesses, and these are really just archetypes that you hold, that you're wanting to embody yourself. But I always talk about the fact that you're going to meet each of these goddesses. It's going to be so different individually, how they show up for you, right? Mary Magdalene, to me, I call upon her when I'm experiencing great suffering in my heart, when I'm having heartbreak, when I'm deep grief and deep sorrow that feels like it's just unending. She comes in and really supports me in that space. So you could understand, everything I said so far, you could understand everything that there is to know about Mary Magdalene from the perspective of like knowing her history, knowing every single thing about her life. But it's a frequency, it's an energy. This is what you're calling in. This is what you're bringing into your life. And when you call upon her, she's going to activate you. First, I personally feel like Mary Magdalene will heal you. And then she's I feel for many, she's the opener into true feminine wisdom. That's the word that's really wanting to come out. True feminine wisdom and true feminine liberation. And sort of like taking off the shackles and the chains that we've been wearing as the feminine for so long that we don't even know we're wearing them anymore. She helps you to take those shackles off. So she is incredibly powerful to work with. And I feel like there's going to be some people watching this who might have like a lot of religious programming around Mary Magdalene because she was called a prostitute. Pope Gregory, I believe that was his name, in 491 AD or sometime around then, made an announcement, a very famous speech that said like, yeah, Mary Magdalene did walk with Jesus, but she was just a prostitute. But the thing is, I teach a lot about this in the Priestess Returns. The thing is, prostitute doesn't mean today what it used to mean. And this is where we ask the question, is all of this intentional? Was all of this an intentional decision, or was it perhaps just an unfortunate mistranslation? Everybody's going to have a different thought about that. But prostitute used to mean a woman who worshiped the moon, a devotee of the goddess, a priestess. That's what a prostitute meant. And the word obviously has changed a lot in its meaning over time. So now when we hear, oh, Mary Magdalene was just a prostitute, we associate a certain meaning with that. That completely diminishes how we see her. So she went from feminine Christ to prostitute, right? She was a sexual priestess, but that doesn't mean what we would think that it means today based on the word prostitute. And there's one of her faces is the sexual priestess. It's the liberated sexual energy, which is one of the most powerful energies we can be in. But we purposely, for sure, purposely on this one, have not been taught how to work with our sexual energy to create magic, to create great power, to empower ourselves, and to support and create beautiful manifestations. We haven't been taught any of that. And so she's also really powerful to work with in that phase. And that's something we talk about extensively in the Priestess Returns. Anyways, so Pope Gregory called her a prostitute, and this immediately just... So going back, understanding the time frames of everything for me really changed a lot, because when you understand, okay, Jesus and Mary Magdalene's time was like 0, right? We have before Christ, after death, that time frame, right? So zero to like 33 is generally the time frame that they lived. And when you think about, okay, 491 AD, that's like 400 and some years later, almost 500 years later, nobody in that time frame would know who they were. Nobody in that time frame would, like, that's 500 years later. That's like somebody telling us now, oh, in 1550, this famous person from that time frame, they were actually this. Like, it's so far removed, right? So it's like, how do you know? How do you know anything, right? So when you start to, this is why I think it's so interesting to learn about the history, because when you actually look at the time frames of things, it's like, makes you start to question things and see things really differently, because a lot of it, it's just like, bro, why has nobody told us this before? Why is this not included in history books? Because it keeps us out of our power. Once you learn this information, there is no going back, and you're going to start seeing things wildly differently. Mary Magdalene is the key to that. She's one of the keys, and I have her picture back here. I can't remember if I said that in this video or the other one I tried to record that was way too long. But yeah, so she is the key to that. Now in I think this was in the 1970s, a different pope said, oh wait, there's like, so I'm getting them mixed up because I don't have notes in front of me. This is just from my memory from studying this, but there were two different implications, or two different times when Mary Magdalene is mentioned by different popes. And it was actually just in 2017 that Mary Magdalene the Pope was like, just kidding, she wasn't actually a prostitute, she was the apostle of the apostles, which means the highest rank next to Jesus, basically. That you could think of that as like captain of the disciples. But she was the feminine Christ, she was the counterpart. The thing that has destroyed our global system, or anybody who is connected to Christianity in any capacity, that's destroyed our society, that has taken us to an extreme amount of imbalance, literally is the root of believing that only masculine has power, that the feminine has no power, that the feminine is demonic, that the feminine is something to be ashamed of. If you literally read the first few pages of the Bible, you'll see this. It's imprinted throughout. And it's very, very, very unfortunate, because when you go, we can blame a lot of different things around the imbalance that we see in our world today with the lack of feminine energy and over masculinization. The root is literally the story of Jesus and Mary Magdalene. Mary Magdalene and Jesus were equal teachers. And you can see this when you study. You can see different reports that people talk about. You can see this when you look at the Gospel of Mary and when you look at the Nag Hammadi text and you read the things that were left out of the Bible on purpose because they didn't want women to be seen as having power. This is the root of all of that. And so when we reawaken the Magdalene within us, we are restoring balance into our own life, and that ripples out. And that's why we're starting to see such a shift and change. And when you look at the timing, again, it's so interesting because a lot of these texts were discovered and published around the 40s and then in the 70s also. And you start to see, okay, around that time frame is when women started behaving a little bit differently, when there was an influx of freedom, especially around the 60s and the 80s. And, you know, in the last 40 years, you look at, or let's look at like, think about, so I'm 32, think about your grandmother's age and what women were like in that time frame, or the great grandmother, you know, people who were born in 1900s, like 1900. What was their experience like being a woman? What was the experience being a woman in 1950 like? What was the experience in 1975 and 2000? We have grown so much in our expression and freedom. There's been so much growth, and that's gonna continue because we're rising in our feminine remembrance. And when we say feminine power, I just want to like stop and just talk about that for a moment, because power, we have a very distorted image of what power is, because we've been living in this world that has a great imbalance of masculine energy, and this sucks for everybody. That doesn't benefit men at all. That leads to, you know, and I'm not picking on men or women here. What I'm saying is that this affects everybody in a bad way. It's not good for anybody. Everyone becomes more over masculinized, and we don't have access to our feminine energy. And you can see this more so with men, because they also have a lot more pressure and responsibility on them in different ways than women do, and expectation and things of that sort. And when they don't have as much access to their feminine energy, that's super sad. It's really, really sad, but women are the same. And so we're all, this is a movement for all of us, not just women. You just see it a lot more drastically in the female collective, because we hold more feminine energy. So when we remember it, we awaken it, and that awakens it in the men around us, and our parents and our partners and our friends and our coworkers. When you awaken the Magdalene within you, it affects everyone and everything who touches you. I promise you that. Whether you're planting a seed or it's, you know, you're watering the seed, and eventually the seed grows into Jack and the Beanstalk, and it's this huge thing that changes the whole planet. This is what's going to happen. This is what is happening. This all starts when we remember the Magdalene. And you may have a different goddess that comes to you, and Magdalene isn't a goddess, by the way. You could think of her as an ascended master, because she was human. And this is why she's so powerful, because when you work with her, when you work with a lot of goddesses, like, they weren't human. They were gods and goddesses, right? They were superhuman. They didn't walk their feet they didn't live a human experience. And one of Mary Magdalene and Yeshua's great teachings is that they talk about anthropos, the fully divine and fully human, being both at the same time. Whereas a goddess is kind of just fully divine, right? And a human is just fully human. and they might not have divinity, and we're bringing the two of those things together. We're bringing the two of those together. And so when she works with you, she understands what extreme trauma is. Can you imagine if you were a woman and your husband was the one on a cross and you were sitting at the feet of the cross watching that? Can you imagine that? Like the amount of suffering for her and Mother Mary, right? The amount of suffering. So they both walked as humans, and that's what makes them really powerful to work with, because they understand. They understand, but they are also holding that fully divine power that they can help you rise out of that, not because they're saving you, but because they're teaching you how to do it within your own body. They're teaching they are teaching you how to bring divinity in through your actual body. So this is sort of the start of your ascension process. You know, people say that there's a spiritual awakening, like, oh, I had my spiritual awakening. You're going to have thousands of them, if not more than that. There's not just one spiritual awakening. That's a joke. You have one that like kicks off the rest. So for example, probably in like 2012 or something, I had my first spiritual awakening. And then I had another my ascension started in 2020. That's when that started. They're two different things. Your awakening and your ascension are wildly different. The ascension is much more intense. The awakening is just like you just took a long nap and you're just like fluttering your eyes open like, oh, this is what my room looks like. The ascension is, I don't know the metaphor that goes with that, but like it's much, much, much more intense. It's when you start to transform yourself from inside out and really bring in that same energy of the fully divine human. One of Mary Magdalene's other teachings that I really, really love, and I think we'll close here, is she talks about the eyes of the heart. This is also one of the topics that is not included in the Bible. That I don't remember if this was in the Gospel of Thomas or the Gospel of Mary. There were a collection of Gospels that were left out, and actually people were told if these are found on your person, you will be executed. And so some brave souls saved these papers, and they've been found in different parts of the world, mostly in the Middle East. I believe in Greece and in Egypt. I might be wrong about Greece, but I think that the same copies have been found, and it's interesting because I think 7 pages are missing from each of the copies, and it's like, oh my God, if we could know what was on those 7 pages, right? But these things were left out because when you look at, and this is what I teach in Return to Goddess, the free masterclass, and I keep promoting this because it's extremely valuable information. I 1,000,000% would have been executed for sharing that information 500 years ago. Zero doubt in my mind I would be burnt at the stake as a witch. So like if you have access to someone giving you this stuff, go watch it. It's free, right? And the Mary Magdalene masterclass is only $30. That's less than you going to dinner. You know, like watch this stuff. It is so informative and supportive and helpful. And if you feel ready to go deeper, get the Priestess Returns. I'm lowering the price. This isn't something I'll probably offer live again. But there's really powerful workbooks in there that are like 70 pages each. It's basically a book. And then there's also video lessons, and there's group calls that you can rewatch. You're going to have a massive experience being a part of this. And also it's going to awaken your remembrance as a priestess. So anyways, where was I? Yeah, so a lot of these texts were left out of the Bible, and they show us, so that what I was speaking about before was the eye of the heart. And this is where a lot of times we see things from our mind, and understanding and recognizing the purity of our heart and how we can see through the heart instead of seeing through logic. And this is one of her really powerful teachings. And this is also something that this is written all over the place in the Bible about, you know, how he just accepted everyone and he would help anyone, even if they had, you know, a major stigma, like the woman who had been divorced 1,000,000 times and was like a social pariah because of that. And he's happy to sit with her and talk to her. You know, it's that same energy of just unconditional love. But what we've been taught about religion and about Christianity in particular, but this really applies to any of the monotheistic religions today, because all of them have a single Godhead. There's no goddess head. There's no mother, right? It's all just the Father. And this is where I'm going to end today, because I could keep going for fucking 12 hours on this, if not more. Where is the mother? Where is the daughter? Magdalena is the daughter. Magdalena is the daughter, and the mother is the goddess. There's a god and goddess. If you look at any family structure, there's a mother and father. And if there's children, you know, then the children could vary, but like there's a mother and father. There's a mother and father, and the mother and daughter have been left out of the story. And so no authority is ever going to teach us about this. We have to teach ourselves. You have to take power into your own hands to learn about this and really to feel it. I just personally love learning. You can see like a small fraction of my books here. I love learning. I'm always in courses, reading a million books at a time, like always learning. But you could read as much as you want or watch as many of my masterclasses as you want. That's going to be helpful for sure, because it gives you context and it helps you understand things from a more rational, logical perspective, which we need. But you're going to have the most rapid development and transformation when you feel her presence. So I invite you to come into those masterclasses. Like I said, Return to Goddess is free. That's not about Mary Magdalene, but that's about the history of the shift from the matriarchy to the patriarchy. Really important information, like very, very, very important. And then the Invoking Mary Magdalene masterclass is $33 and extremely powerful. You're going to learn so much in a short amount of time. And then there's an Akashic Records journey at the end that you can do 1,000,000 times and have different experiences. Because working with Mary Magdalene, there's many different layers. So you can keep going back to that journey. This is what I personally do, because I go back and listen to it because it's super powerful and just also really beautiful and like soothing. And it just, your heart feels so like warm and open after you do it. And I go back and listen as I sort of like, you know, in quotes, graduate different levels of my learning with her. And she helps support me in the next layer of growth and the next deepening of my work with her. So there's that. And then the Priestess Returns, I believe it has 5 modules really. The first module is all about the fall of the priestesses, about the priestess lineage. Super fascinating, super, super interesting. And then I share the 4 faces of Mary Magdalene. And like I said, there's in-depth reading for you to do. Each module has about it's like 40 to 60 pages in each workbook. And it's not just like big spaces for you to fill stuff in. Like that might be a few pages, but it's so much depth of learning. And then there's video lectures about each of the topics, about how you can really learn to embody it and just expanding on what the workbooks say. And then there's group calls, so you can listen to all of that. And there's also Akashic activations in each of those. So very, very, very valuable for you. And if you feel drawn to it, please get it. I'll put the link in the comments below. And if you have any questions, you can message me on Instagram or email me at aliwilkinsabundance@gmail.com. Happy to answer any questions about it. But yeah, I really just wanted to share because a couple days ago, like I said, was Mary Magdalene's feast day. And I really just want to help share the frequency and the energy of the Magdalene, which again, Mary Magdalene is one of the many Magdalenas. So you might be a Magdalena watching this, especially if you're drawn to this, because not everybody's going to be drawn to it. And maybe you're not and you're just interested, and that's totally cool too. So anyway, that's it for today's video. If you enjoyed, please give it a thumbs up. Please leave a comment. If you have any questions that you want to ask, go ahead and throw that in the comments as well. And then share it if you know somebody that you think would be interested in this video or in my channel. And then of course, subscribe if you haven't already for more topics and information around the ancient feminine, around, you know, really rising into your highest timeline. And I also do energy updates and stuff like that too, to support you in stewarding your energy so that you can really come into your highest embodiment of yourself. That's the purpose of all the work that I do. I also do Akashic record readings that you can get one session or you can get a package. I do mentorships with my clients as well. Invoking initiation into your life so that you can, again, become the highest embodiment of yourself. Not through changing who you are or becoming more and more and more, but learning how to work with your energy alchemically. And it's a whole different vibe than, you know, regular personal growth or regular coaching. This is about internal alchemy and transforming into your highest self. So I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. Please share what came up for you or any respectful thoughts that you want to share. And I will see you on next week's video. All right, bye.